typically what we like to do, Amanda, at the beginning of our podcast is just allow you to share a little bit about yourself and your journey, kind of like the highlights of Amanda Monnier. And then we will take the conversation from there and really highlight a bit more about who you are and the specialness that you bring to the world.
Oh, I love it. Well, thanks again for having me, and hello to everybody listening. I'm so happy to be here today. So gosh, where to start? I mean, there's so many ways I could start this. As Holly and Jeanna mentioned, I am a healer. I also like to kind of call myself a healing facilitator because I'm really just, we're co-creating it, right? And so you guys already kind of mentioned a bit about my background. How I got into that, though, is a whole other story. As I was growing up as a little girl, I just always knew that there was a missing piece of the puzzle. There was some things that I knew deep down that nobody was talking about, nobody was telling me, but I just knew. I was like, there's more to life than what I'm seeing everybody experiencing. The chaos, the drama, the patterns, the pain. My parents divorced when I was little, so there were a lot of abandonment wounds that I had carried on for quite some time. And so I kind of did the normal thing where you like, kind of that average, you go to college, you get a job. I ended up in law enforcement, did that for about 6 years and was a probation officer. So I got to see a lot of shit actually,
Oh my
and
God.
literally and figuratively. And it was just a very interesting experience. I appreciate everything that I learned there. I really kind of stepped into my confidence throughout that journey. And then I just knew at a certain point, because I had my initial awakening and consciousness, if you will, I think it was several years into my career there. And so I started doing that healing, like that deeper healing work, the deeper why, like what are we here for? Like what is the point of this? Because sometimes like you can look at what's going on in the planet and you're like, this planet is nuts. Like
Yes.
what in the heck is going on here? Like this is just very interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because I believe that there are a lot of other societies, planets, if you will, where things function a lot more harmoniously. So I do feel this planet is one of a lot of density, and really part of the process was for me learning how to move out of that density so I could actually step into the truth of who I was. Because that was that missing piece that I felt
Wow.
nobody was telling me. I had so many issues going on with my body. I was exhausted, riddled with acne throughout even up until the last year. And I was just determined. And that's one thing I will say to people listening is just don't give up. Like wherever you're at is perfect right now, but consistency and that determination and just not giving up on those soul nudges. And so I ended up leaving my career in law enforcement. I just knew it was a leap of faith. I sidestepped over to my family's business for a couple months. I was like, I'd rather collect urine samples at probation than do this. So I I sold my home. I was actually in escrow. I was sitting in my car. I had walked off the job. Mind you, I've worked since I was 15. I've never once walked off a job before. And I was like,
Wow.
like I just knew deep down, I was like, I'm out. It was like that mic drop earlier in this conversation. I was like, I am out. And at that moment in time, my home's in escrow. I'm not gonna have a home in about 2 weeks. And I'm just like, okay, universe, okay, God, like let's see what's up, because this is where I'm at right now. This is what my next step is. And I didn't know what the next 10 steps were. And so I actually moved. I was originally from Northern California, moved to Southern California. This was all in the matter of like a month. Quit my job, sold my home, moved to a
Wow.
different city. I was like just
Wow.
going for it. And everybody's, journey might not look quite like that. Like I'm not recommending that, all your listeners go quit their job today and
Right.
move to a different state or anything, but
Right.
you never know. Maybe that's for you.
Right.
So I ended up just going all in on my business. And actually, the first year, it's been about a year and a half. So the first year of my business it was humbling.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
I thought I was just going to, slide right in. It was going to be all sunshine and rainbows. And it
right.
was some deep, dark shadow work. But what I learned throughout this process and what I'm so passionate about bringing to people is that we actually don't have to keep experiencing these painful cycles. There's a difference between that and spiritual bypassing, which we hear about
Okay.
a lot of. So
Right.
there's a difference between being attached to this lower timeline that was created to keep us stuck in our pain body cycles, pain body loops, all the physical ailments, all just the distortions and pain, relation, you name it, fill in the blank. We all have our
Yeah.
little blank that we fill in of things we've experienced that aren't divine. They're not our, they're not what our soul came here to
Right.
experience.
Right.
So just going through my own process, and really the beginning of this year coming out on the other side to where I'm like, we actually are meant to thrive. We are meant to be in divine health. We are meant to be connected to that divine harmonic of the truth of who we are, our own soul frequency, because we all have a different frequency. And so that's the very condensed version of what has gone on in the last several years up until this point. And even though I cried buckets last year, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So here I am.
Wow.
Okay.
There's so much. Okay.
So when you realize that this planet is dense, is that when you started your own new planet? Is that Holli wants to go to? I mean, is that when it started?
Well, let's talk about what density is, because
it's great. It's a great way to say it, actually.
Being in that position in the law enforcement is very dense, and it's interesting. I wouldn't think of you as being the least. We probably need to define what dense is. I think of you as being the least dense person in the most densest.
Yes. Business.
Yeah, not dentist, but densest. Type of work. And, I think, that's.
Yeah, define dense.
Define that?
Yeah, define dense for
what
us.
that is.
Yeah.
And then. Yeah, as best
you
as
guys got
can.
a couple hours.
I know, right?
And then, how do we, because we're all in dense environments, so maybe you can just give a little just a little education on what that is, and how to transcend that a little bit. Yeah.
So I'm going to take it really foundational for everyone, because if we're talking about everything at the foundation of frequency and energy, everything carries a frequency, everything carries a resonance. So if we're talking in the sense of density, to me, things that are, especially if it's like you're feeling that density inside yourself, it's like those are the things that aren't you and never were. So they could be in the form of so many different things we as humans love to label, but at the end of the day, foundationally, it's a frequency. So it could be a very dense identity structure, something that's not aligned. Like you see yourself as this person, let's say, for example, that even though you don't love it, like you put yourself in this identity structure of, oh, I'm a 9-to-5, like blue collar worker, for example, or a dense emotion, a dense emotional behavioral pattern. For me, it was that abandonment wound that played out for up until I was about 31 years old. I'm 32 now. So until last year, it was this lower timeline I was plugged into, where I call it same man, different face. So these are not, there's a difference between there being a soul lesson and being trapped in a pain body cycle that is meant to keep you stuck and in collapse. That's not the vibe. I'm talking about, like, there are things where we press up against those edges and the growth and the soul evolvement. That's a completely different conversation than these cyclical pain body loops that are meant to keep us in basically prisoner, right? In this matrix, if you will.
Right. Okay. Wow. Okay. We're in the matrix.
Yeah, well, I love
it's
that.
So good.
So, okay. So let me ask you this. I love to look at patterns, so I like to look at that loop and let's try to break it. But how do people disconnect? One, I guess you have to identify that you're in it. Yeah. I like that. I was in a, I out of obligation, I stayed in my job, like the criminal justice career that you had for 6 years, but I stayed in my whole life, and I knew it was wrong from the very beginning. But I felt like I should do that. So that was one thing. I had a bunch of things that I noticed that I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. But I stayed in it. I feel like, everything's right and on time. So I'm not going to say that
too long.
I mean, I could wish that, but I can talk myself out of that and say, it was perfect timing. And so for other people that want to disconnect from that pattern, that loop, how do you do that? And I feel like, in my opinion, energy healers have help, but some people don't even understand what that is. Yeah. And so what are your tools, having your friends, your community to help you, having silence? What are the tools people should go through to figure that out and evolve past it?
Great question.
Yeah, there's several different things I would being kind of guided to touch on. The first thing, and this is something I didn't know, I've been, working in this I guess, officially for the last year and a half. And it's not until recently where something clicked for me. So the first thing that I feel is really important is unplugging from this lower timeline. So I feel we all have this, what I call the golden timeline, which is what our soul is meant to experience in this lifetime, like what we've chosen. And that is attached to our own divine harmonic. And we're thriving in this timeline. And so we have been, I mean, there's so much, we could go down rabbit holes on this stuff. So I won't go too deep into that for the sake of it being a really long kind of conversation. But when I speak of this lower timeline, this false matrix, there's actually these energetic templates. We can refer to them as implants, entities, energetic software programs. They're embedded into our music. They're embedded into our movies. They're embedded into different rituals, even in the spiritual community we've been told to do. The hijacking is not just, it's not like a, just a one thing, but it is, and it actually affects our biology. I call it like a bio-hijacking system. So my, my suggestion would be to first revoke consent to that, because it's tied to contracts and ancestral contracts and blood oaths that can go back. But the thing with energy healing that I feel was kind of missed when I started down this path is we go back to the root seed point conception. If we think of it as like a plant, you have a plant, and if you turn the leaves off, that shit's going to grow back. You pull it out at the root, you neutralize and harmonize it, so you can then have more, like you're releasing the density so that you are in the space to where you can actually be in connection with the truth of who you are. So the first step would be unplugging from that false matrix system, and completely revoking consent to any of that. And, there's a lot of things that go into it, but even just being willing to see the truth. That's one thing I said at the beginning of the year. I said, I choose to see the truth no matter what. And the things that popped up were very intense. Because there is a level where I do believe as we expand our consciousness that these things happen rapidly. Like when we notice something and we choose, okay, I literally am rewriting this timeline. We're going back and we are doing a massive change history, as I call it, across all timelines. And we're multidimensional beings. So all aspects of myself that are still playing it out, because an easy way to understand this is that everything's happening in the now. So if you're experiencing something from a past life, but you're feeling it in the now, it's happening in the now anyway. So it doesn't matter. We don't have to necessarily go back and, do 17 like past life, retrievals and all the things. Go back to that original event because it's coming up in the now. And so it makes it a little easier, but unplugging from that first and foremost, that this false hijacking system, and it really has, I'm not saying it hasn't affected the men, because it has for sure, but it's tied a lot of it to the feminine and to our womb space and to our ability to create and to our ability to be able to step into this, because even sometimes we have these thoughts that aren't even us. They're not even us. They're literally thought forms that are part of this distortion that are causing us to be like, oh, wait, like second guess ourselves, or, again, fill in the blank. We all have our own kind of flavor of what we've experienced. So that would be, I feel, number one is revoking consent to any of those infiltrations and choosing to see the truth, being willing to see the truth, but also following through, and sometimes that's uncomfortable.
That's going to be our assignment, our uncorked assignment.
Oh, 100%. I mean, especially when it gets to some of those root.
Oh, that root. I love that analogy, because I clip the leaves. I mean, and you can tell when the leaves, when the root comes out.
Oh yeah,
how differently you feel. But
when you think about it, when it could be some of it could be coming from, your religion, or when you think about like at your rooted in your core. For many, that is, one of the, largest elements of your makeup is what you learned as part of your religious beliefs. Yeah. As a child with your family,
all kinds of beliefs.
All of those. But yeah, I mean, when you choose to acknowledge where they are,
I choose to see the truth.
Choose to see the truth, even as hard as it may be, when it comes to some of those really core tenets of society, that's a big
Yeah.
deal, right?
It's
a
a
big
No,
deal.
for some people it means death, right?
Yes,
It
yes.
feels like the energy of death because an identity structure that's not
Exactly
you
right.
has to
And then
transform and
who
die.
am I?
Who am I?
Then
If
who
none
am
of
I?
this was
Yeah.
right, then
Where's my
what's
golden
right?
timeline?
Right,
I love
right.
that.
What
Okay.
can I ground myself to, right?
So I have to go here because
Yeah.
you opened it up, and I've been like really trying to understand this better for myself. And if I'm a listener, I would say, okay, how do I know if those aren't my thought forms?
Yes,
How do I
yes.
know? And then for me personally,
Yeah.
how do you know? And maybe these are separate questions, but how do you know? Like, I feel like I've done a lot of personal work, and yet I went to a healer, and the healer saw something that had attached itself to me and said, well, you know,
Basically said I can't heal you until you detach.
you
or
detach,
yes.
you do this salt thing and whatever. I did it, but well, right, because I was like, I can't, right, okay, so I was like, how do I know if I pick up stuff that isn't mine?
Yes.
And even a more basic level is, how do we know if we have who's our thought forms versus somebody else's? So yay. I've been dying to talk to somebody about this. I've been talking about this for weeks.
We've been talking about this for weeks, actually.
And I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know? I feel like I'm evolved, and yet I didn't know.
Yeah.
And
how long have I had this thing? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love this because part of it too is when people are working with me, I'm not healing them, right? It's coming from my source connection, coordinating with their higher self. We're co-creating it. It's magic. We're doing that. We're co-creating together.
Right.
So one thing that I feel is to answer the first question I believe you asked is, how can you tell? So, and this is part of really kind of getting to know yourself and how you process energy. Like, I call it an intuition muscle. But the first thing I always ask is, one, you can ask, is this mine? And whether you'll get that ping, is this mine?
Okay.
Is this my creation? And second, is it something that feels expansive, or does it feel contracted? So is it light or is it heavy? Is it light or is it heavy? And so a way that you can quickly, because we all have our own unique medicine. Like, this stuff, like, is not unique to me. Like, we're just tapping into a level of consciousness that allows us to access these more expansive states, which are really just our divine birthright. So anybody can do this. It's not just unique to me, but you're going to have your own unique way that you bring it. So one thing that I would recommend to people, and by the way, you are your higher self. Your higher self is not separate from you. Yeah. And so you can connect with the all that isness of you, which is an extension of God's source universe. So we're not separate. The separation stuff is utter nonsense. Right. And so the whole, like, I mean, I'll leave it at that, because I have some thoughts on what you shared about, like, the thing that you were told. But literally, also I'll say as well that it's all through intention. So you are that powerful. It's just a remembrance. So what you can do, like, let's say you're in that situation, and also with healers too, it's like that was that healer's perception of what was going on. Right. So it doesn't even mean that that's exactly what's going on. That was what they were seeing, right? So one thing you can do is connect to your higher self, your own divinity, and you can, we call it God, source, universe, fill in the blank. We humans love to label stuff. You can call in that frequency of the heart of source and just command that it be dissolved, and it dissolves. That's it.
Okay.
That freaking simple. So, and that's the thing. It's like, we are that powerful, and when we're in that state, and when we're in that connection, because you can never lose that connection. You can never lose it. We feel disconnected because of the density, but you are an extension of source. It can't be severed. We get fragmented from all the stuff that happens. So sometimes we have to kind of pick the pieces up and remember, but that's why I always say this journey is that of a remembrance of who you are. So did that answer all the questions on how people can actually do that? Because you can literally, you don't need a healer. You don't need permission. Right. And if you need permission, this is your permission.
I don't need to dunk myself in a salt bath 5 times.
Although that would have been actually pretty funny to try and watch. All the way, whole body, yes.
But is there such a thing as, as entities and that cling on to you? Because I used to not think that there was anything. I'm super Mary Poppins, and there's a beauty to Mary, because everything's just glorious. Okay,
And
I
just
don't
a,
see
and
any
just
evil.
a spoonful of sugar
I don't
helps
see
everything,
No,
right?
please don't have any sugar. But
I am. Mary said it was okay.
She did. Okay,
Yes.
maybe if we bless that sugar and transcend it and alchemize
The point
it.
is, it's
yes.
something
Okay. Never
simple
mind.
and
Okay.
at your fingertips at any time.
Yes.
Can solve
Is
it all,
that
right?
like? Is there? What are your thoughts around that?
So the way that I would explain entities, entities are low vibrational frequencies, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Entities can be viruses, entities can be bacteria,
Absolutely.
entities can be a trapped spirit here that is in some form of torment, right? But we are so much more powerful than all those low vibrational frequencies. That's why when we're anchored in, and that's why like I have not had popular mindset of most people in the last several years, because, and I guess maybe it speaks to me living on another planet, but I live on another planet here because to me, COVID doesn't exist on my planet. Like sickness doesn't exist on my planet. Like that is not our divine birthright. Now, no judgment for those who are navigating through things, right? Maybe there's a lesson there for you, right? Maybe you're going to find your purpose work by going down a certain path. So there's zero judgment in that sense. But we also don't, when we are anchored into something out of fear, chaos, any type of like, you shall do this because, and it's because it's some sort of coercive energy. To me, like if someone's trying to convince me to do something, it's going to be a no. Like, especially if it's like, oh, fear, you have to be so afraid, do this thing. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks so. Because if it was so great, like I'll find it on my own and I'll say yes, because it'll feel like a 10 out of 10 for me.
Right.
So, we don't have to plug into those things, and we don't have to plug into things out of fear and chaos. Goes back to intention. So to kind of circle back to your question, do I feel that entities are real on this planet? Yes, but it's also a framework of what are we calling an entity, right? And do I feel like there's certain things that can be attachments? Yes. I feel an entity is a negative belief pattern about ourselves. Like I'm unworthy. To me, that's an entity, because that's not divine.
Yep.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily need to be someone else's for it.
Doesn't need to be like a
trying to attach to my light. I'm like, stay away from my light.
It's mine.
It's mine.
It's mine. But do you feel like there are people like energetic vampires that do seek out light workers and try and attach to fill their own cup up?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I feel that's where discernment comes in. Yeah. So I feel that that's where, you get into this state of, I am so anchored in my truth, and I'm so anchored in my power, and I'm so anchored into my own source connection that I can use that discernment, because yes, it is out there. And I fell into it in certain way, shape, and form last year when I thought this was the thing and it wasn't the thing. And I learned a very beautiful lesson. Like I, invested near 20K last year in my business, and the ROI was near zero. And I was like, okay, I learned very beautiful lessons. I paid 20K for some beautiful lessons. So, and to me, it's again, just remembering, one of the most important things we can remember is when we source outside ourselves, that's when we give our power away. So it's all about sourcing from within, from our own reunified energetic. And we're just not taught this stuff. So it's no fault to anybody. We're learning, because even these lower timelines and this false matrix that I spoke of, that's an entity, right? Because it's anything that pulls you out of that truth. It's anything that, all the disease we have on this planet, like that's not the vibe. We're not meant to live in these states of suffering. And we can simply, through intention, remember that we can connect to our own source connection, and we can call in these codes and these downloads. And I mentioned we all have a unique soul frequency. So we all got a special sauce to bring to the planet.
Yeah. For sure.
Oh, I love that. And so we had an ROI situation too. And I went out, and I feel responsible for it, of course, but she's not blaming me. But and I
oh God, no. Oh no, I know what you're now I'm picking up what you're putting
out.
No,
and I was I had called in my angels and said, okay, should we do this? Is this the good thing to do? And it was a good thing to do. And it was a good thing to do, but in retrospect, and so I too like to say, okay, well, what was the beautiful lesson here that we needed to learn? I'm not clear yet what the lesson is. And so what advice would you give to those that, okay, we feel like we're, leading from our higher self, and then it really didn't go well. And we're really about like highlighting the good, and there is good that came from it, but I'm still sitting there going, huh? Okay, really?
We could have done that a lot cheaper.
And yeah, a lot cheaper.
Could have learned those lessons
a lot better
for
like,
a much better cost.
Did I get out beyond my skis? Did I, you know, like what was that? And so so when we're in this situation where we gotten a job that we thought was going to be great and it wasn't, we thought we were led there, or you know, maybe moved and didn't like it. I know you like where you live, but you know, like, how do we turn that around and look at that from a spiritual standpoint?
Yeah, I love that question. I've learned that sometimes it doesn't make sense until it makes sense. So I know that's a very like
wait for it sort of mode, right?
Wait for it.
I mean,
that's what I do with my dogs and their treats. Wait.
So tying into that, one thing that I've learned is there's like a combination of different kind of structures. We got more like the feminine and the masculine, the flow, the structure. And for me, it's like one thing that I've had to really sink into is not needing to know the next 10 steps. And sometimes it's just, you get that one ping, right? We kind of mentioned this earlier, and you know, like, okay, this feels really aligned. I'm not sure why I'm being guided to do this. And, you know, I'm going to go ahead and take this action. And so sometimes it's like all the information isn't always revealed right away, but as it continues to unfold, like we kind of put the pieces together. Because even like I shared with my story last year, I was super confused because there was even one point, like the Embodied Essence member community that I spoke of, you know, this was at the end of last year, I believe. And I was like, okay, God, I'm ready to just pull the plug. Cause I had several members in there, but I was just feeling like super discouraged. And that day I was like, you know what, screw it. I was like, if I'm not supposed to be doing this business, if I'm not supposed to be doing all this, like, you know, fine, let me know. I said, I'll pull the plug. And literally that same day, I hadn't had to sign up in forever. Like someone just randomly signed up and dropped it. I was like, okay, got the message.
Okay.
Yes,
so
I
one thing I would say too is to simply ask. And sometimes like the answer will come in a way that it might come through a person speaking to you. It might come through a sign. It might come through your dreams, but you can always ask. You can ask your higher self, tune in and say, hey, like, I'm really just wanting some more clarification on this thing. Can I please have some more guidance? Show me the guidance. And, you know, I would love to receive some more highlights on what this is. And I found that it always shows up when we do ask and we're being open and receptive and into whatever way that answer is going to show up.
And do you have kind of a dialogue back and forth with your guide, with source? Like, you know, when those little nuggets come, is there like some conversation, acknowledge, like talk about the relationship you have built with your higher self, your guide, source? Because I think that that's something that I'm trying to continue to work on for myself too. And I think it's probably a big part of the equation. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, you know, we can never lose this. So for those of you listening that are feeling super disconnected, I've been there. Like I have been there. So I honor you wherever you're at. There are a variety of different ways that you can do this, because what I found with this journey, it's not one size fits all. It's not black and white. Yes, there are their universal laws and all that. Absolutely. But as far as the way we connect with source, God, source, universe, our higher selves, it's all very unique. And there are a bunch of different ways that you can really tap into this intuition muscle, this inner knowing, the way you communicate with energy, with frequency, with God. I'll give you a couple things that have really helped me. One is understanding my human design. That has been very powerful because I'm a sacral generator. So like that gut instinct, because for me, it's like, even though I sometimes I try to kid myself, I always know right away if it's a yes or a no. And I do feel it in my gut, and my gut never leads me astray. And understanding that on a deeper level. So if you don't have your, if you aren't familiar with your human design, doesn't mean you need to like, you know, do 20 hours of diving into it, but just understanding your type, strategy, and authority is really powerful. You can start playing around with it. So there are all the different clairs. I'm not going to go through the whole list because I don't even remember all of them. But for me, I feel and sense energy in my body very deeply. For some people, they hear things auditorily. For some people, they have more visions. Their intuition speaks in dreams. A lot of people, it's like that the intuitive pings I've found are a little softer than that louder voice, which can often kind of be those, you know, those projections and those patterns and the ego. And so really tuning into which ways you communicate. Maybe it's going in nature and and being in silence. Maybe it's writing it out, really learning what your area of genius is in relation to the way you communicate with the universe, the way you communicate with yourself, the way you even treat yourself, because it's a relationship, right? And oftentimes it's a beautiful indication to take inventory of the relationships in your external reality, because this hologram is just simply a mirror. So if you have a lot of relationships where you're getting mistreated, feeling depleted, or there's a lot of like icky patterns there, that might be something to look at as to ways that you're kind of treating yourself in that same way, where you could bring more love back in and maybe release some things or set some boundaries and to start to play with that, because it all is an inside job. We have been trained to, project our stuff onto others, or, hey, I got to talk to this person and try to get them to behave differently. Like, I found that the powers from within, we have all the control in all the situations, and, we don't have to go into those patterns of collapse. We really don't. So really just starting to build that relationship with yourself from within, and asking for support, asking your higher self to reveal these things to you, and being open to receiving, and having another maybe added layer of trust in that, and exercising that as well.
I love that. So, and is that how, one of the questions before Jeanna asked that, I was going to ask how do we find our golden timeline? How do we find that? And maybe it's some of what you just said, but how do we find that quickly?
Well, it's actually, you don't have to find it because it's inside of you. So there you go.
Okay. It's already I love it. How do I access it then?
Yes.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about this is, and this kind of gets into like some of the quantum conversation, because time is a human construct. And when we think of it in that way, it opens up the field of possibilities instantaneously. So what we can actually do is, you can even do it right now. You can close your eyes. You can access that part of yourself that is already living in, let's say we're talking like divine health. And I love the Divine Radiance blueprint all around your highest expression of health, vitality, and radiance. So you can tune into that frequency and that aspect of yourself that's already living in that space. So you can communicate with that version of yourself. You can embody that version of yourself. You're literally tuning into that frequency. And that would be an example of the golden timeline for your divine health. And you can start to play around with that and really build. It's all, identity is so powerful. And this is something that is oftentimes missed. It's like, I'm all for the love and light stuff, but like, if the identity structures aren't in place, and that's all tied to the masculine energy, and if the masculine can't hold up the feminine, then it's like, well, what are we going to do here? We can just love and light our way through, whatever. But I hope you, I don't know, a sugar daddy or something. I don't, but like it's so important to really anchor in these templates and these identity structures, because this is where we're creating from, is these identity structures, how we choose to see ourselves, what we're embodying, whether it be like different, like archetypal themes, even like I'm playing around with some of those. They're kind of fun. It's like, become that person that does that thing you already are, right? There's an aspect of you. My friend, I really want to get this book. I believe it's called The Midnight Library. My friend was telling me about it, and it's all about, and I haven't read it yet, but I feel like it ties to this conversation. But it's like all around like these different timelines. Like, I could literally today be like, you know what, I want to be a dolphin trainer, and I could go like access the version of myself that made that choice to be a dolphin trainer, and I could embody the identity of someone who does that. Like, we can literally choose whatever it is. My recommendation would be that is in alignment with your heart and soul, that it feels expansive, right? Because that's part of the golden timeline, is having it be something where it's like, this is what my soul chose to do. But we also have free will here as well. So the golden timeline is just literally your soul's highest expression. And I call it the divine harmonic. So being in that divine frequency, we all have a different frequency, a different soul blueprint, a different soul resonance. So, we're not all the same. It's like, our fingerprints are all different. So it's like kind of likened to that is a metaphor that I use.
Oh, I love that. And so some of the tools that you use is human design And is there such a so what is the radiance blueprint?
Yeah.
Is that
Just curious about that too.
yeah, I was like, okay, what is that? Is that a tool? And then there's Gene Keys, and then there's no wonder I'm like fangirling over her whole podcast.
Yeah,
She
no
talks about
doubt.
all these fun things.
She really does.
Yeah. So I don't use, so for my clients, like I'll pull their human design and their gene keys because it helps me understand them at a deeper level. But honestly, in my healing work, it's a lot of recoding. It's a lot of quantum rewiring. It's a lot of what I just mentioned of stepping into that aspect of yourself that's already there. It's anchoring in that golden timeline and then releasing the structures and the resistance and the distortions and the implants that is not that. So you can literally see it in the physical. Because a lot of people with like this healing work is they'll do all this stuff and then they'll be like, well, where the hell is it? Like they don't see it in the 3D physical reality because we're not taught how to anchor that in. People don't understand the way that the laws of the universe work in order to actually see those manifestations. So to answer your question about the Divine Radiance blueprint, that's something that came as a download to me. So that is, and it's available to everybody, but it's the divine template for your highest expression of your health, vitality, and radiance, as I call it. So it's basically the health codes, if you will, and the restructuring, because I do feel that our DNA has been spliced and messed with, and our divine DNA is a crystalline light body DNA. And so we're not meant to be getting sick. We're not meant to have acne. We're not meant to have, not be able to take a shit for 2 weeks, like that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's just
boy,
like
you're hitting on all the
issues.
It's just not
exactly. Yes.
like we're not meant as women to have all these hormone. The amount of times I hear women say, "Oh, I got hormonal issues," or "I got like PCOS," or all that stuff. That is not divine, right? And again, no, zero judgment, right? Because
this is what we
the reality of
it's where they're at. Right.
Yes.
Right.
So the Divine Radiance blueprint is your soul's blueprint for your own health and vitality, because it's going to be a little different for each person because it's tied to your own unique harmonic, your own soul's resonance on your 100% optimal function of your physical body as you continue to evolve into that. And so I've even noticed, like, I'm like, sometimes like the structure of my face is different, like things change even anatomically as we start to step into this and really choose it. And then along with that, we can access different, because if everything's a frequency, then we can literally just access different health codes and things to where we're rewriting all the distortions, because I just think of it as data corruption. So if we look at, software programs on a phone, even, right? When we upgrade our phone, people like don't balk at that 1 second, but we're like, oh, let's upgrade the template of the body. People like, okay, you woo-woo weirdo. Like, you're not everybody, but you know what I'm saying.
No, it
like,
is true.
Common. It's not common, but literally our fascia is like it can hold memory. Like our whole body holds it. Our DNA holds it. So we can literally rewrite the script. We can rewrite the corrupt data. So when I say corrupt data, that can be anything from ancestral imprinting, from alternate timeline imprinting. It can be, something that we're feeling where we're feeling some sort of disconnection, ailment, whatever, fill in the blank. And we go back to that original seed point event and we neutralize and harmonize it and just choose to step back into the truth of who we are. And so that's why with my clients, we're always first stepping into the frequency of what it is you're choosing, because we're not coming at it from, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. And then we rewrite the script of what's causing the resistance to being able to have that fully expressed in the physical.
Okay, so let me ask a question. So I have always said, like, I don't, and we were just having this conversation before we jumped on the call with you around, the manifestation of who I am today, I feel like is a byproduct of denseness. We'll just use your language, right? And I don't, in my core of who I am, I have a very different vision of who I am than what is actually physically
present.
Me. Right. Exactly.
In the now.
And I live as much as I can in that version of myself that is not what people see always, because it has felt innate to me from childhood. Like I always had this feeling about who I was, right? And then but then when I like do certain things, like we were just talking about going in, trying on clothes is a great example. Like, okay, I have a vision of what I am, but then when I actually stop and like look at the real physical part of it, it's like, oh, well, hell, I don't look anything like I thought I did. So I'm curious, like, is that sort of what,
well, it's beyond the physical though, Jeanna.
it is beyond the physical.
It's
for
on
sure.
how you show up as
Yes.
as your personality.
But of course, 100%. But I'm just going with something that's like physical because I think it's a little. For me, I'm a visual person, so it's a little easier to like.
So are you living in fantasy, Jeanna?
Well, my sense is the fantasy there, and if I align with the fantasy, will the rest come?
So the way I explain it to people is I feel that there's 3 components of this type of work that I found. So it's that conscious creation piece of stepping into that and really anchoring that in that frequency and living from that space. So for example, I'll give an example, like, as far, because money is a big one for people, right?
Yeah,
so let's use that for an example.
Sure.
So we have someone who is like, oh, like I really deeply desire like to have millions of dollars, right? To have 7-figure income. But then literally in their physical reality, they're pinching pennies and like having, these reactions to where they're not actually living from a space of that identity structure. Not that I'm saying you have to go out and put yourself in debt,
right?
But what I'm saying is that, if, we're stepping into that frequency of the aspect of us, because if you deeply desire it, like, why the hell else would we be here other than to be able to experience these things in the 3D physical reality, shift paradigms on this planet? I think this is an amazing time on this planet to really anchor in some new structures. And when it's coming from that place of heart and soul alignment, those deep desires, for me, I desire to have that because I feel like having money is freedom. It's a tool to be able to create ripples and change. And, I want that in the hands of amazing, soul-driven, good-hearted people, right?
Who do that not only for themselves but for others.
Yes.
Agree.
Yeah, it's
100% agree.
So when we have that whole ideal and desire, so that would be like step 1, stepping into that frequency of that aspect of yourself, right? And then you have, even if it's just subtle behavior changes, so we have like the subtle behavior, like structural changes that would need to take place. And then another component, so the second component I'll say is like the energy healing work. So the releasing of the resistance, so the energetic resonant structure. So let's say, for example, there's some sort of family programming, and this can be, this can be multifaceted. Specifically with money, it tends to be fairly multifaceted for a lot of folks. But let's say that there's, family structures where, you must save all of your money. Let's say that that's like, part of it. And so you're just kind of like, oh, well, I don't even want to like spend money on the sandwich because I need to save it. And I could, eat a bologna sandwich at home, but my soul really wants this meatball sandwich, like it's like, well, wait, because then it's like a contracted energy.
Right.
So the second component is the energy work and the releasing of the resistance and the recoding. So, from that seed point. So it's, all the distorted templates. Like I said, first and foremost, unplugging from that false matrix, revoking consent to that. And then the third thing is presence. So being in the now, because the thing is if we're constantly chasing the future is not just an ideal, right? All we have is this now moment. So if we can't be in the now and sit with ourselves and allow what's coming up and, revel in the present, it's like the silent instruction of the now is not good enough. So those are the 3 components that I found to really be kind of like a little special sauce as far as really starting to see those manifestations show up in the physical. So, when you were describing this kind of experience you were having, it's like, deep down, your soul knows. And that's the thing, like we don't need to second guess these things because our soul already knows. So I want to like validate and honor like what you said, because your soul knows deep down what you desire. And so what's kind of the gap right in between that is all the things that aren't true, right? And so one thing you can do is notice when that's coming up. So you have this truth, like literally, even if you just pause for a moment and notice, okay, like you be the observer, right? And that can happen in a variety of different ways. Even simply taking a breath and letting that story break up already does some rewiring work neurologically. Or you can use a method where you just like sit down and you're like, okay, where is this housed in my body? Or you can even just say, hey, higher self, I'm feeling this. Can you just like release this for me at the root? Like I revoke consent to whatever this is. Sometimes we have to go a little deeper, but I'm really finding that as we continue to expand, we can clear lifetimes and timelines of this density in minutes.
Wow. Wow.
So
I love
it's
that.
because that's that contracted energy I was speaking of, right? It's not, that's not true. That's not true for you. It doesn't feel true for you. Therefore, it can be just let go of, right?
Right.
And sometimes, you know, if it's like that inner child, sometimes that might require a little nurturing, you know, a little love on the inner child. If it's ancestral, oftentimes I'm like, this is some nonsense. I'm out on this.
Like, that was somebody else's anyway, right? Right. Yeah.
You can even say the words cancel, clear, delete the story. Like, you know,
cancel,
I don't
clear, delete the story.
I love
that. Cancel, clear, delete the story across all times, all spaces, dimensions, realities, and just letting that go, calling in from source, from the heart of source, just asking for support. And oftentimes like you'll find it neutralize, or you know, you can seek out some support to help that. But it's also a beautiful awareness that you feel that kind of like, okay, this is what I know is true, but this is what I'm experiencing. So that's step one, is that awareness.
Okay.
Okay, listen. All right, so Jeanna, here's the story. Okay, I want to go build a house in her neighborhood on her planet, and then go ask for tea. Say, oh, I run out of tea. Do you have any? And then just pick her brain for 5 hours. You know, poor woman, she wouldn't get anything done. All right,
I know. If you see someone that looks like her, I'll give you my cell phone number. You call me, I'll come pick her up.
Oh my God.
I'll come pick her up.
Amanda, this has been absolutely amazing, and we're gonna say Amanda Monnier, but we're not gonna go Monnier anymore. It's too much. Okay, but
no, it's never too much. No, that's how we feel about her. We do it.
I love this so much. Can you tell us a little bit about your community? Can you tell us a little bit about how to connect with you? And obviously, I mean, we already know that you're an amazing healer. Yeah. And so
yes, we do. Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, well, thank you both for having me first off. So yeah, my community is like my baby, so near and dear to my heart. It's called the Embodied Essence Community, and we meet weekly. So we do this type of work that I'm mentioning, the stepping into that golden timeline, that truth of who you are, the recoding work. And, you know, we do it in a group setting because we can give instructions to the higher self, and the higher self knows what to do. So we work at that capacity. So, you know, anywhere from these energy healing sessions, I found it to be very powerful when I couple it with breath work. And so, you know, if anyone is interested, I do offer the first session. People can come as a guest, just come check it out. Or for your listeners, I'll give you guys a special code. If someone's interested in joining, they can get their first month free if they would like to join the community. It's just month to month too. So it's like people, you know, I'm not holding anybody hostage, like come, you know, check it out. And, you know, if it feels aligned, then absolutely. I do a lot of body healing work. It's been very interesting. I do healing work just in general, but a lot of people have been coming to me for body work. And that's kind of where that download for the Divine Radiance blueprint came from. So my current program, we're actually on week 8 next week, it's called Radiance. So we're literally stepping into health, vitality, and radiance. And I work with a variety of different modalities, but one is an energetic allergy healing. So we're going through an allergy. People think of, oh, you mean like a peanut allergy or bee sting? Like an allergy is just anything you're not in harmony with. Like I could be allergic to this microphone, and there's just a variety of different things that are really layered into it. And so we just work through, I have hundreds, thousands of frequencies in my kit. So we're working with hormones, we're working with organs, we're working with the fundamentals. Like I was actually allergic to my own blood at one point. And so amino acids as well. I was allergic to my amino acids. And so they were not assimilating properly. So we work in all that way, shape, and form. So I do, you know, a lot of work with people on the physical body symptoms, because at the end of the day too, we're multidimensional beings. So if you have a physical body symptom, it's going to send ripple effects to all other aspects of you, because the physical body is just like, excuse me, something's not right. And oftentimes it can be like an event, an emotion, like it's so like layered anyway, to where it's like, we're doing body healing, but it's everything healing.
Right. Oh my gosh. I love that. Okay, so, and we will put the code in
I
the
love
show
it.
notes. That
Yes.
is so gracious of you. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Fantastic.
Go check her out. New Earth
Yeah.
Visionaries, great guest, great podcast. Subscribe and check out her website. We'll have it all in the show notes.
And we will go to your planet anytime you invite us. And you're welcome back to our planet anytime you'd like. We'd
It's the
love to
same
have you
planet,
back.
Jeanna.
I know, but we like energetically,
Okay.
we're in different places, which I love. So yes.
I love
Thank
it. Thank
you,
you, ladies.
Amanda.
You guys are amazing. So much fun.
Thank you.
Likewise. All right. Take care.